Hello, today we're going to begin a series on Blender 3D, which is a free 3D program for rendering and animating computer graphics. And it is a free download on blender.org, so all you have to do is go there and you can download it from their website. So if you're new to Blender, one of the first things you're going to want to do is learn the basics of the program, such as selecting objects, manipulating them, navigating with the camera, and then possibly animating and rendering as well. So let's go ahead and jump in. There's really nothing to be afraid of. It's a lot like other 3D programs on the market. If you used 3D Max or Maya or Lightwave or Carrara or whatever, there's going to be a lot of fundamental similar ideas, but the interface is a little bit different, so we have to spend a little bit of time getting used to that. Selecting objects is a little bit different, and rendering, and all the programs are fundamentally quite a bit different in some ways as well. So nothing new there. So let's just dive in. This is the interface. On the right hand side we have a list, which is a scene graph, which shows all the objects that are in the scene. You can select objects excuse me, you can select objects from here, or you can select them directly in the viewport by right-clicking. A lot of programs use left-clicking, while Blender uses right-clicking. So if you want to select the camera, or if there's a light in the scene, or another object, just right-click on it, and that's how you select. To manipulate objects or translate them or scale them, there's usually control handles that you can use to directly manipulate the object. There's a little button down here that can be toggled on and off. If these tools are not visible, you can usually toggle them on. These let you select either if you transform the object, if you rotate it, or if you scale it. So if you want to scale something, you can do it one axis at a time, or you can do them all together as well. Let's see. The next thing we want to learn is navigation. Now, navigation is also slightly different in Blender than what you might be used to, so we're going to go ahead and learn that. If you use the middle button and hold down that middle button, you can orbit around the center of your scene. And if you use the scroll bar or the scroll wheel on the mouse, you can zoom in and out. This is very useful for working with the scene, but at some point you're going to also want to view the scene from the camera. Let's set up the camera so that we can do that. This is your camera right here, and if we want to view the scene from the camera's perspective, say we wanted to link the camera to this ability to orbit, let's do that. Under at the bottom there's a view menu, and go to where it says, let's see, it's here, align. Let's see, I think it's not align, it's well, it's here somewhere. Yes, that's it. Align active camera to view. And this will take the camera and place it where we are currently viewing from. So that's under the view menu, align view, and align active camera to view. And when we click on that, suddenly our camera, as you can see by this bounding box, that's what the camera sees. Our camera is now aligned to our view. We can zoom in and out, of course, and all that. But if we move camera by orbiting, well, that pops back out of that camera mode. That's kind of a problem because we want to stay in the camera. Well, what we do, let's go ahead and turn that back on. Align view, and let's see, align active camera to view. And now what we want to do is, over here there's a little plus sign. We want to pull that out, and we want to scroll around until we find the area where it says view. It's a drop down menu or drop down tab. We want to click where it says lock camera to view. And now, as you see, when we scroll around, we are actually still in that camera mode, which is great. And not only can we zoom in and out not only can we zoom in and out and orbit around like we've been doing, we can also hold down the shift key and use that middle mouse button, and that lets us also move the camera around, or move the view around for that matter. And that's all great. One thing we notice though is this little orange box, this rendered area, is really tiny on the screen, and if we use the scroll wheel, that's actually moving the camera. It's not changing that zoom. So let's actually just for a minute turn off that that link where it links the camera to the view. Let's turn that off for a moment. Oh, sorry, that's right here where it's locked to the camera view. Let's turn that off for a moment. And now when we zoom in and out, you see the actual zoom, the actual camera area is being zoomed in. So now we have the full working area, and that's a lot more desirable. Let's turn that back on so we're locked again to the camera. And there we have navigation in Blender. It's a lot like other 3D programs now, where you can just select the camera and navigate, zoom in and out, and all those sort of things you would normally do in a 3D program. Alright, so now that we're pretty comfortable with navigating and selecting objects, well, let's start working with an object. Let's get rid of this box. That comes as part of the default scene. Just press select it and press delete on the keyboard. There'll be a little dialog asking you to delete. If you want to delete that or not, hit the delete button, and that'll take care of it. Now we have a blank scene. All we want to do is create, and we're going to create a logo, a text logo. So let's go ahead. Here at on the side, you see there's some tabs. One is tools, one is create. Well, we want the create tab, and we want to scroll down until we find text, and you'll see it pops up a little text object there. We can zoom in on it. We can orbit around it, of course, just like we were doing before. We can move it, scale it. Remember, we have this little button down here that lets us select which type of translation we want to use. Alright, but that's fine, but we don't really want text that says text. We want text that says something else. So in Blender there are two modes. There's the object mode. That's the mode we've been in, where you can move things around, translate them, scale them, rotate them. Well, there's another mode called edit mode, and object mode and edit mode. Or you can just press tab on the keyboard. That will toggle between edit mode and object mode. We want to be in edit mode, and this will actually let us edit that object. So we can use it just like a text editor and go ahead and type in whatever we're going to type in. That'll be fine. And hit tab again, and that'll take us back to object mode. So that's basically all we had to do to set up some text. But this is kind of dull, just a plain flat piece of text. Let's make this more interesting. Let me move this out of the way for now. Make this a little bit larger so we can see it. And over here there's some tabs. They have little icons on them. What we want is this one. It's about 7 or 8 in. Has an F on it in the case of text, but it's the object edit mode, or the data mode. We want to click on that, and there's some various things here. There's you can select fonts. I'm going to keep the font the same, but there is an option to select the font. You'd just go into if you're on Windows, you can usually find some fonts in your, whoops, misclick. Let's see, I'm in Windows. Okay, fonts, Windows fonts. There's usually some fonts in there, wherever that's gone to. There it is. There's a whole bunch of fonts in there, anyways. But I'm not going to load one. I'm just going to stick with what we've got. Whoops, I'll cancel that. Cancel that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and keep that the way it is. But there are some other things we want to do to this. One is to extrude this, and another we want to create sort of a bevel around the edge. So let's go ahead. We're going to stay in this tab here that we've been in, and we're looking for the geometry tab. You can open and close it, and there's some options here like offset, extrude, depth, and resolution. Those are the ones we want to concern ourselves with. Now, offset's an interesting one. It just kind of makes the text bigger and smaller. That's kind of cool. That's not really what we're looking for, but that is kind of cool. Extrude is what we're looking for, and watch what happens here. That literally just extrudes the object, kind of like the old Play-Doh where you'd make spaghetti or whatever with your Play-Doh kit. And another one is called bevel. If you watch what happens here, this is pretty cool. Now, objects in the real world don't usually have these incredibly razor sharp edges like these have. They usually have a little smooth edges, like it's been sanded off or something. You know, you don't want these sharp edges where kids cut themselves. Alright, so I'm going to take this bevel And you can see that kind of, it doesn't really round it off. It's sort of a tapered edge. But we want this to be a little rounded off. We want it to look like it's a kid's toy or something where the edges are smooth and you won't hurt yourself. So I'm going to take where it says resolution and increase that. And you can see it's adding like extra little vertices in here that are kind of rounded off, sort of a subdivision surface type of thing or something going on. Alright, so we've basically created our text object, and as we said before, you can always zoom around and orbit it all. One thing we want to do is rotate this into the right position. So we're going to go ahead and click on this rotate tool, and you can do it by hand, but I want to do it numerically. So as you remember, there's this little tab over here, little plus sign up here. You can scroll this out. Well, if you look at the top of this, there's some numeric entry fields, and there's already one where it says rotation. There's already we've gone to 93.7 something degrees. We just want to round that off to 90 degrees, and we're done. Alright, so this in itself is a little bit dull, though. We really want to have something else in our scene. I might move this down a little bit while I'm thinking about it, of course. Let's see. Using that shift key again, as you remember, we can pan and zoom and all those things within our scene. Alright, let's put a rectangle underneath this, or a plane or a table that it's sitting on. I'll just go to the side over here where we're still on this create tab, click where it says plane, and that'll just drop a plane object into our scene. Not sure where it went. There it is. And just move this down a little bit until it's right under our object. And that mouse scroll wheel really helps a lot, just zooming in and out. And that middle button orbiting, you can really see what's going on with your scene very quickly. A couple other buttons that are useful there are on the numeric keypad, not the regular number keys, but the numeric keypad. That's usually on the right side, and a bunch of little numbers, about 9 of them. The 7, the 1, and the 3 keys will let you see side view, top view, and let's see, side view, top view, and front view. Alright, so that's very useful sometimes, and you can also go back into the camera mode. We're already looking through the camera, so that's already in sort of camera mode, which is very useful. Another thing that's also very useful is being able to toggle a 4 view, a quad view, and that's under this view menu called toggle quad view or Control Alt Q. Too many keys for my for my brain to remember, but very useful nonetheless. Where you can see all the different views, and it starts to get a little reminiscent of Lightwave at this point, which historically had a quad view. All right, so let me continue what I was talking about. I'll get out of this quad view for now. And well, this plane isn't really big enough. We want it to really be sitting on like a tabletop or something. Let's scale that up. Alright, that should do it. Now we're basically ready to render. Blender basically has 2 renderers, and one thing that's really cool that we can do is, instead of using this OpenGL preview that's it's really fast and everything, but it's really not very realistic looking. One thing we can do is go into where at the bottom where there's like these little icons here. It says these ones here. Let's see. It says method to display shade objects into 3D view. Well, we're probably in solid mode or texture mode. We want to go up to where it says rendered, and lo and behold, our interactive viewport that we were working on is suddenly a rendered viewport. One thing you notice though is this is not very interesting looking. There's sort of like a default light and a drop shadow, but it's not realistic looking. And as I was saying, Blender has 2 renderers. One is called the Blender Render, and the other one's called Cycles Render. We're going to use Cycles. This is a much more realistic renderer. Even though what we're seeing right now isn't very realistic, it's just all gray. This is because, well, there's just no lights in the scene. In fact, Blender's Cycles Render does not use lights in the conventional sense. It uses geometry. So what we want to do is create a plane, or we could use a sphere or really any object, but a plane is going to be good for here. I'm going to just add that like we did before for the ground plane. And just while I'm positioning this, I'm going to get back out of this rendered view and go into, if I can hit the right button, let's see, going to where it says rendered. I want to make it just like texture view or something like that. This is a little easier to work with when you just want to move stuff around. Let's see. And I just want to move this above our logo or whatever this is. There, so that's going to be a light, like say it's like a fluorescent light or something. This is going to be our ground plane here, and this the thing that says dog is our logo. Alright, so let's go back into the rendered view briefly. As you remember, is down here, click rendered, and we get this sort of a still gray looking. There is a little bit of a drop shadow. This is because we're actually using this light, and so we want to turn off this light though. I'll go into this scene graph and just click lamp. That's the one default light that comes with the scene. I'll just right click, and there should be a delete menu item. There, now we have no lights in the scene. I'm going to select this ground plane. In fact, I might rename that. I believe it was this one here, and we'll call it light plane. Good enough? I hope that was the right one. Let's see. Let's make that an emitter. That means it will emit light. So just like we came over here and found that that edit data, now we're going to go to where it says edit material, not texture but material. We're going to click new. There's going to be some options. The default mode is diffuse BSDF. That's fine for objects, but since this is emitting light, we want to use the emission. And lo and behold, that light plane that we just created is now emitting light. And there's a strength field here. You can manipulate that and make it much lighter or darker. You can change the color, all that stuff. Alright, that's cool. Still not very realistic, but that's cool. Next thing we might want to do is, and if you keep watching, this will eventually resolve into a much higher quality object rendering. Going a little bit slow. There is actually a GPU rendering option that makes it faster if you have NVIDIA hardware. That will be under the render tab, and where it says render, there's I don't have that option because I'm on AMD, but perhaps in the future that'll be supported as well. But right between display and feature set, there should be a button that says GPU acceleration. Alright, so all we want to do now is create a texture for, or a material for the ground, and this this text item. So I'll just select plane. I'll go back to where it says material, click new. Diffuse BSDF is fine. That means it's a surface that diffuses light. I'm going to just give it a color, sort of a red, like a red carpet treatment. Alright, and I'm going to change the roughness. And that's all we're going to do to that for now. You can actually see this light being reflected off of this ground and bouncing onto this text logo. And while we're thinking about it, let's give that a little bit of color as well. Let's see. Click the text object, click new material, and I'm going to keep it. No, I think I'll make this one reflective, maybe glass or glossy. And the default mode is very glossy, as if it were being completely reflective. You can change the roughness, and that helps make it not look so much like glass. And I'll just give it another color, sort of greenish blue, which will be fine. Alright, so we've created a scene in Blender. It's now ready to render. If you look on this render tab, you'll see there's a render button. If you click that, you'll get a render of it. There is one thing you want to change under the sampling tab, where it says samples. You say the render is set to 10 and the preview is set to 10. Well, 10 samples is fine for the preview. You see it's really grainy, but you can see what's going on. But when you're going to do a final render, you want to set this up to 100, maybe 200, 300, or even 1,000 if you want to get a really smooth, realistic render. So when you're ready to render, that'll take longer, but it'll look a lot better. Alright, so that's covered the basics of everything. There are some specifics we might want to get into at this point, however. You'll notice one thing, that sometimes with these weird looking, it's not supposed to be there. You can tell it's not supposed to be there. Well, this is because it's smoothing this sharp edge where it really shouldn't be trying to do that. It should really be trying to have a sharp edge here and not this smooth on this side, but not smooth on that side, and it just doesn't know that by default. So what we have to do is, in that case, we have to convert this from a text object into a polygon object. Now, most 3D programs use polygon objects by default, and there's not a lot of special case objects. But in the case of this text, we have to actually convert it if we want to do any fine-tuning to it, such as fixing this problem. So let's go to where it says Object, the Object menu down here. Make sure you're in Object mode, not in Edit mode. And we're going to go Convert to, and convert mesh from curve, mesh, surface, or text. It's going to make a mesh out of either a curve, a meta, a surface, or a text. And this is text, and what that does is makes a mesh out of it, meaning a polygon mesh. And one other thing we want to do is, if now we have some other options here. If you look under tools, there's some new options that you didn't have before. You see shading can be either flat, and that actually fixes that, or it can be smooth. In the case of flat shading, it fixes that because now we have a hard edge there, but we also get these little faceted looking edges on these other parts. We don't want that either. We don't want smooth or flat. We want sort of a hybrid, and this is actually in a different place. You can see it better now, by the way. You see these little vertices showing. We don't want that. We want a hybrid between smooth and not smooth. And if you go to, I believe it's under object data, let's see, that's material, that's data, alright, object data, and under, let's see, where is this at? Under where it says normals, you see auto smooth and double-sided and all this stuff. Well, we click on auto smooth, and you see where it says angle is 180 degrees. We want to make this 45 degrees. It doesn't have to be 45 degrees, but in that case this works pretty well. So watch this. Suddenly we no longer have this black. It's no longer trying to smooth across this weird hard edge here. And we also have to make sure we're on smooth, so let's make sure that's also on. So smooth. There. Now it's smoothed. It's smooth, but with this auto smooth, it doesn't try to overcompensate. It's like a cutoff. It says like anything over 45 degrees, don't try to smooth that. Or we might want to make it 90 degrees, or a little just under 90 degrees, and that would be perfect because this is a 90 degree curve here. So that is basically, in a nutshell, our first Blender scene, a logo. At this point, you might want to render it. Just go into the render tab here, click at the top. There's a render button. If we had made an animation, there are of course settings for rendering this. You'd have to create keyframes for this, and this is a little bit beyond the scope of our demo today, but just to show you how you can do that. As you remember, there's this little sidebar here that we pulled out. Well, if you look at these buttons where there's location, rotation, and scale, and so forth and so on, if you right click on these, there's a little thing called insert keyframes, and that basically lets you set keyframes for animating these. So that's something to be aware of. A lot more we could talk about that. But once you've animated a scene, you just, instead of rendering the one frame, you click on the animation button, and that would render the whole animation. Across the bottom of the screen, there's a timeline that lets you see all the frames in your animation. There are, of course, you can save your frames under this render menu. There's the option to set the resolution. One thing to be aware of is this will often be set to, there's a scale factor under the resolution, and it will often be set to 50%. Well, you want to make sure it's on 100%, otherwise you'll get a half resolution. I think that's there as sort of an, for doing test renders. You can do a half resolution test render a lot faster than you can do a full resolution one. Just be sure that's on 100% before you render. You can set your screen resolution for whatever you want to use, and set your output folder, and give it a file name. Make sure it gets saved somewhere. If you don't set that there, it may not get saved, I guess. I'm not sure. But you can also set the format. There's BMP, PNG, JPEG, Targa, Cine, all these other formats, MPEG, all kinds of stuff in there. You can render directly to an MPEG, for example. And as we said before, setting the sampling much higher will give you a much higher quality render when you do your final render. Alright, so thanks for watching. This has been Daniel Ritchie, developer of Howler Digital Painter. Be sure to join us on our YouTube channel, which is PD Howler on YouTube, where we do a lot of tutorials on different 3D subjects such as Carrara, and of course our own product Howler, PD Artist, and coming soon PD Particle 9, which will be out in this spring. And also join us on thebest3d.com. That's Philip's website, who has done over 500 tutorials on his on the PD Howler channel by now, which is kind of remarkable. And also join me on squirreldome.com, which is my own website where I sell my Howler program, which is a 3D painter. And again, thanks for watching, and ta-ta for now.